Hello, I'm Dr. Darlene Chambers, Senior Vice President with the National Charter Schools Institute. We are going to be covering the tiered intervention policy and practices. A well-designed tiered intervention policy will establish the performance expectations and consequences of not meeting those contracted metrics with the school and board at the beginning of your relationship. It's critical. A well-written intervention policy states general conditions for triggering intervention and the type of actions and consequences that follow. So there's no questions, everybody is well informed. However, the absence of a formal written policy could lead to confusion regarding what is and what is not a material performance expectation a school will be held accountable for. NACSA, the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, recommends that the intervention tiers not be absolute and allow some wiggle room for professional discretion considering the context of the intervention needed and the range of effective solutions. It's time now to experience sample intervention policy tiers for you to look at, ponder, and perhaps use. They will be in order of severity, but keep in mind, although this latter I'm just about ready to go over with you appears to be in sequential order, authorizers should reserve the right to place a charter school on any of the status levels without going through a preceding step. How does that happen? There may be some immediate actions that will warrant jumping down to a different level immediately. We'll discuss that. Let's begin our intervention level walkthrough. Each level, I will share with you the possible triggers and a quick overview of possible consequences or results that will come from those triggers. Keep in mind that these will be advised areas. You can customize, you can use different language, but I'm trying to give you a typical level 1. Possible triggers: sign of weak performance, financial issues developing, keyword there, developing, and repeated failure to submit compliance documents on a timely basis. They get them in, but they may not be on time. Possible action consequence would be a letter to the school's governing board detailing areas of concern. Notice you may not want to give a cap at this level. This is a beginning level, and it's oftentimes not required. The next level, 2, notice of deficiency. Getting a little more serious. There's multiple performance areas that are far below standard. Maybe a significant financial weakness. Concern for 60 days cash. Failure to comply with state law. Failure to comply with charter terms. You're starting to notice that. A letter to the school's governing board I would highly recommend, and I think it's time for a cap. A corrective action plan with some definite actions to resolve the triggers. Level 3, notice of probation. We're getting serious. Continued failure to meet performance targets. Failure to meet that corrective action plan, or just disregarding it altogether. Continued significant financial weakness. Failure to meet state and federal laws and the contract terms. Possible action and consequences that would make this different than level 2. You still have that letter to the governing board outlining the terms of probation and a required cap, this time with very specific improvement expectations within a very defined timeline. And the monitoring will be much closer because the school potentially could be on probation at that level. Level 4, notice of charter review and suspension. You can tell the severity is increasing. And so are the triggers, by the way. There's a pattern of failure to comply with performance targets, a pattern of failure to address probationary status, any caps, a flagrant disregard of charter agreement. You can tell by the terminology that it's a pattern that's been developing. A possible action consequences, a recommendation to revoke charter and impose a lesser sanction, including but not limited to perhaps reappointing the board, creating an interim board, requiring a new school leader. Authorizers, be careful about being overly prescriptive, but we're in serious territory with a charter review and a suspension. So it might be time to sit down and reconstitute the charter that refers to the board and the new school leader. Last but not least, level 5. This is the point of revocation and closure. Continued patterns of failure to comply with performance targets, addressing probationary status, flagrant disregard for the charter agreement, and misappropriation of funds. These are areas that are very hard to recover from, and on behalf of the students and parents, it may be time to talk with the board about closure. Possible actions, letter to the school board explaining the reasons for revocation. By now they should be well informed, but the letter is something you need to put in writing. And a charter closure timeline goes in effect immediately. Authorizers is very, very important to avoid closure mid-year, except in cases of fraud, misappropriation of funds, and a flagrant disregard of the contract or severe misconduct. Why do I say that? Because closure mid-year is an extreme disruption for students and family. You will do it if you have to do it, but if you can close the school and revocate the charter at the end of the year, it's the better choice if the choice is available to you. Closing out, to review the intervention tiers we just walked through, we have created a virtual station rotation for you. All you have to do is simply access each tier and treat them like a station, and have guided reflections of your understanding of what would be a trigger, where you are in your context, and the potential consequences that could result from those triggers. Practice, reflect. Remember, your policy preference may not require all 5 levels, so please customize to your environment, your context. Last but not least, I'm hopeful that this intervention checklist will do 2 things. It is designed to help ensure that your process and policy are complete and consistent. I'm also very hopeful you will use this checklist tool to audit a current practice or policy that you have. No worries. If you do not have one, use the checklist to guide you to develop one. Going over each one as we close up. Intervention clearly defined in contract and/or policy. Communicate regularly with your schools, the need for timely notice, and performance deficiencies, addressing those. Provide technical guidance to ensure compliance with all applicable rules and regulations. Make sure that your intervention is incremental, articulated in writing, and enforced. It is helpful if your tiers and your intervention practices increase in severity as public needs are considered. Thank you for your time.